All right. Welcome to the MDC Talks. We are the Motion Dance Collective, a Screendance production company specializing in the curation and education of dance on film practice. Today, we're asking the biggest question of them all. What is screen dance? What do we do? Why do we do this? And yeah, again, it's a very big question. And even for this question, I haven't prepared questions. Because I think it's just good to kind of talk on a baseline of what we think it is right now. Mm-hmm. So, James, what's screen dance for you? Like your experience of being a cinematographer of dance for the screen.
Yeah.
What has it been in your experience of it?
When I first picked up a camera, obviously we've all come from dance. You are still in dance, so I was a dancer first. When I first picked up a camera and started thinking, I want to start making some, videos with dancing, my thought process was, because I know dance from the inside, I want to make images that show off the body. I want to make images that show how the dance actually works for the dancer. That has changed drastically as I've gone away from dance and really focused on cinematography and really learned about the film side of dance on film. It's changed massively, and the more I learn about how film works, the more I am starting to discard the focus of the dancer as a whole.
Right.
I don't know whether this answers your question, but this was my trail of thought throughout what I've done. Is film is kind of magical in the sense that when you watch a film, you are guided in terms of what you see, and that is down to the director and the DP and in this sense the choreographer. And what I've learned as I've got better at what I do is you don't have to show everything, and people's brains are really good at filling in the blanks. So that's been the change for me over the course of like where I started. I wanted to show everything. I wanted the whole body to be in frame all the time because I was in a mindset of I'm a dancer and I want people to see what my body is doing at all times. And as I've moved to film, I've started going, you know what, they don't need to see everything all the time, and actually what they need to see is just these little bits that give hints at the story or the tone or the emotion that the person is trying to deliver through this dance. People are very used to, at this point, filling in the blanks of what they don't see. And in some senses, it's more powerful. So I think that progression has kind of taught me a little bit more about merging the two. It's like, how much of the dance do we need to see? And how much can we take from film to influence our presentation of that?
I love that. It's interesting, like thinking, because I'm obviously not a filmmaker like the two of you. I don't really work with cameras. I'm not behind the scenes as much. I don't get to have that thinking cap on. So I guess it's like a whole other thing to think about it from that side.
Yeah. So what is it for you then on your side, coming from a dancer perspective, especially the ballet contemporary world as well, because your association with film through your experience
is very different than yours. Yeah, for sure. When we first met, I was, I guess performing, auditioning more in a classical sense. And I do have a classical dance background, so my relationship with dance on film was very much just learning choreography from footage or recording dance, not necessarily screen dance. I didn't know what that was when we met. That was something that was sort of like sparked my interest, and I was like, wow, what is this? It's like a whole other work of art. And the journey's been really interesting because as an instrument, as a practitioner, what stories can we tell? Like, obviously, the reason I love to dance and the reason I am a dancer is because of the way it makes me feel, the sensations that happen, the work, the mentality. Like, there's so many things about it that draw me to it. But when you add another element of film, everything it changes everything. I used to think that, you know, nothing was more powerful than live performance. And to a certain extent, I think I still believe that in terms of, you know, just feeling that energy in the room. But there is a way that I've learned now that you can capture dance on film that completely, you know, it can evoke something really powerful.
It can enhance that energy that would normally be in a room by really pinpointing it.
Yes, absolutely. And like you say, you can control what the audience sees because you're framing the shot. So that to me was so interesting because as a dancer, I'm just, you know, as an instrument, I was doing what I was told and I was moving through the choreography and I was trying to tap into something internal that was making it more powerful. But I didn't necessarily have any power over what you saw of what I was doing.
You couldn't tell them where to look on stage. You could only tell them to look at the stage.
Absolutely. And maybe what I'm doing, you're not even watching because you're watching somebody else doing something more interesting, standing next to me, you know, dancing next to me. So
something more interesting.
Well, you know. But it's one of those thoughts because I remember on stage, you know, and that total fight with perfection that you have as a dancer as well is really interesting. And I love the play that dance film has, the tug of war that dance film has with that ideal and that idea of perfection. Because you, at the same time as you can control what we see on the screen, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfect. You know, we can take any number of shots of the same take, which sometimes we do because there's something we want to capture. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything you're seeing is like planned to the letter. Some things happen by magic. Some things happen by chance. So I don't know. I think it's sort of, I'm still on that learning curve of figuring out what it means to me. But as a dancer, it's just been really interesting to learn about the evocative power that dance film can have and what you can say with it. And at the end of the day, we're still telling a story, which is why I think a lot of creatives come into this industry because they want to tell stories, whether it's through their body or through another medium. So it's just really exciting to have something else that you can explore that, you know, is cross-disciplinary. Yeah.
No, I think these are all very good points to be raised because screen dances, it comes in waves, doesn't it? So 1990s, there was a big wave of screen dance with Matthew Bourne doing a lot of stuff from BBC, full-length ballets and things like that. And then now we're in this big like rush of screen dance courses. There's 4 screen dance festivals about to happen here in London. You know, they're all fighting for their slot around their time to do that. Screen dance festivals all around the world that are finally getting picked up and noticed after 10 years of existing. You know? So it does really come in these waves, and I think we're in a time now that is starting to really boom again. And the Motion Dance Collective are now, you know, known as contributors to that industry and that growth. But yeah, I mean, for me, screen dance, I started screen dance, I guess, coming through the music video industry. So it was very different in the sense that it was very performative for me. It was all based on spectacle. So I had I got like into the habit of performing for a camera and straight down the lens and looking down the lens and like, popping and doing this and like trying to show audiences really cool things while looking at them and going, look how cool this is. You know?
Yeah, it's a different feeling.
Yeah, it's very, very different. And then so when I made maybe my first music video, Turn Me Up Son, like my first actual proper music video, and they let me dance for about 4, 5, 6 hours on this rooftop, and they said you can.
Was that the title of the piece?
Yeah, Turn Me Up Son.
Is that a Buster reference?
It's a Stanton Warriors song,
right?
But Busta Rhymes has a song called Turn Me Up Son as well. So maybe it was. I think they might use the loop. It might be sampled. Either way, that was my first experience of actually a dance-specific music video where the artist wasn't involved.
Right,
where
it was just dancers dancing to the song.
It was about us. The whole story and narrative was about us, and the whole story was told through dance. And I'd never really experienced anything like that, or at least performing in that, where the artist wasn't there and things like that. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this forever. And that was like the first time I realized that, this is the place for me. But then, obviously, through the years of practicing screen dance, I've realized that it gives so much power to what I'm able to say with my body, with the camera helping that, and the edit helping that. So it opens up so many choreographic opportunities. Yeah. And I guess my definition has always been the orchestration of the movement in front of the camera, the movement behind the camera, and the movement of the edit, developing the edit. And there's so many different definitions from lots of different people.
It's still sort of like
yes.
a bit of a gray area in terms of, you know,
it's true,
some people swear by a certain definition, and other people say it's still sort of open to debate, because it's still an underground art form that we're still learning about and we're still practicing.
So I have a question. Does screen dance, we were talking about this in my MA the other day, does screen dance have to have dance in it?
So this question, I remember us having various debates about this, because for me, when I think of screen dance, dance has to be involved. But I do understand now that, because then you go into what is dance.
Yeah, I was going to kind of chip in on the same point. For me, yes, dance has to be involved, but the definition of dance can be so flexible.
Because we have dance theater now. We have so many different styles of dance, you know, and some that you might not necessarily recognize as dancing, but it is, you know, ritual dancing, classical dancing, contemporary, modern, hip hop, I mean, tap, they're like body percussion. There's unlimited amounts of movement that you could classify as dancing. And if you're going to break dancing down to a movement, then that opens up a whole other world.
Yeah, like, but then also, if you're going to open it up that far, then dance film doesn't actually exist and just film exists. Because, you know, any actor on screen can move. So.
Exactly, screen dance can't be everything. And why I say that is that we were talking about a thing called radical screen dance, which was a term coined by a woman called Anne Hayway. I think it's Hayway or...
Radical screen dance.
Yeah.
Right.
And so she was saying radical screen dance is usually screen dance that is within the boundaries of what screen dance can be. So it usually doesn't involve human bodies. It usually might involve choreography through the editing. Or something that happens with maybe a dancer's eye on it or a dancer's aesthetic. And I don't know if I showed you Birds by David Hinton.
Yeah, have you
and
seen
so
it?
he
really
won a very big award. It was entitled a screen dance piece.
Is there a link for that? Can we link that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's available online.
Check it out. So in this piece, he basically gets a footage of lots of different birds, and he loops them, uses the sound of the birds to kind of
makes them dance, basically.
It makes them dance, because there are dances in everyday life. There's dances in nature. And obviously birds definitely have mating calls, all of these different dances that they do, and he put them together in a mishmash of things. Now, when it comes to something like that, okay,
but then do you have to start classing things like National Geographic and BBC like Planet Earth films as dance films?
So I guess what makes this particular piece different is that it was edited in a way that suggested a form of choreographic process. Right? Where he would see the bird jump and he would repeat it over and over again. Planet Earth wouldn't do that, where they would take the same movement and just loop it to make a rhythm, to make a beat, to start to actually show the jump this way, jump that way. So
I'm sure I could find a scene from Planet Earth where they do that.
I'm sure, but that's the thing, is that they would stick to the natural movement of the bird and not interject that with editing. In the same way that when we were talking about Fred Astaire, right, how he filmed this stuff and it was just one take. Planet Earth honor the purity of action in that sense. I guess they might take things from different days and do some parallel editing, put them together to make it seem like everything's in the same place. But with this particular piece, he uses editing in a way that hasn't been used with with animals in a way. So it created this sort of thing. So there's an argument to say now there's screen dance doesn't necessarily have to have dance in it. I saw a piece at a festival where it was two pieces of clothing, a shirt and a dress on hangers. And so the wind, and she's just filming those pieces of clothing, but the wind's blowing them. So you just have this interaction between these two tops, and it starts to personify, or we as humans start to personify the characters of these people.
So my thought process for this would be, so we're suggesting that the use of a conceptual process, a choreographic process in editing could be classed as
screen dance,
as choreography, as dance choreography. But that is something that an editor can do. That is the job of an editor anyway. Is to manipulate images.
The footage.
I mean, it is very true, but then when you come with, I guess, a choreographic mindset, there's certain ways of composing that are specific to choreography rather than just the composition of film. So say using things like repetition, using things like rewind, using things like the ABA structure. I guess it's similar in the terms of narrative and stuff like that, but there are some forms of composition that are very specific to the dance and dancers in general. And I guess as a dancer, sometimes we can spot those out where it's like, oh, he's linked that really nicely, or the way that this is edited is making me really, is making these characters dance, even though they're not moving. Take the Great Spoon Escape that we made. So that is where I was trying to play with choreography through editing. And without editing, without film existing, that piece of choreography wouldn't even be able to be made. And because of my dancer's eye, I was picking out movement that flowed into one another, making sure that it was based on the movement that we saw on the screen.
I completely understand the perspective of that. For me, I don't think I can stretch my definition of screen dance as far as that. Just because I think that puts too much importance on the skill set of a choreographer versus the skill set of an editor. I think any professional editor could do that given the license to do that. I think most editors are not given the license to be that experimental, but I think if they were, because of the skill set they have as editors, I think they would be able to create that, given the license to. I think choreographers by nature are given the license to be very experimental. Therefore, if you put them in an editing suite, their mind goes there anyway. Whereas an editor mind wouldn't go there because they're usually boxed into
these restraints. I want this and this.
This is what the director said. This is what the client said, and they stay within them. But if you gave an editor who was a professional editor, just this is a load of footage, put this together in a way that really brings these inanimate objects to life. I don't think there would be too much difference between what a professional editor could do and a choreographer could do.
I think
I want to argue
given that license.
Because what if the editor came from a dance background? Would they be better prepared to make that work? Because I've had editors.
It would just be different.
I've had editors who've really messed up my choreography and not put it in time, or they had no idea when the one is, or it didn't really matter to them.
But then we're having the argument of a good editor versus a bad editor, and the same argument could be had with a good choreographer versus a bad choreographer. How many works do you go and see in theatres and you go, man, this is just, I'm really struggling with this. Like, I do not relate with this at all. How many bad choreo? I mean, it's a subjective thing, but there are plenty of choreographers who we consider to be not that great. In the same way as you may have had editors who are not that great.
I think one of the defining
They're kind of
characteristics
subjective terms.
for me when it comes to defining screen dance is the narrative. So my first relationship with dance on film, other than learning from it and witnessing like dance on TV, was concept videos. Which is very different, I'm now learning, and I think it's very different than screen dance. Because to me, the difference between them is there's a story that you're telling. And that doesn't have to mean that there's an actual written storyboard with a narrative. It just means that it evokes something in the viewer that, is either a feeling or some kind of narrative nature.
I see where you're getting at, because I guess screen dance is an umbrella term. We can agree that. And Douglas Rosenberg says that quite a lot, is that, it's an umbrella term for all of these little terms: video dance, dance on film, music videos, all these sort of things that kind of come within dance on the form of screen. And I think underneath that umbrella, we've got narrative screen dance and conceptual screen dance. And so
they're so different.
Exactly.
Right?
A concept can obviously be a theme, it can be smoke, it can be water.
It can be place.
Right, exactly. And then the narrative obviously is the story, the through line that carries those concepts and maybe links some of them together. So there is definitely within screen dance a mishmash of ones that have a bit more of a narrative take and ones that definitely are very abstract, very.
But an abstract dance film still might have a narrative.
Yes, it might do. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
then,
like the abstract film that I'm in the process of making has a narrative. You might not necessarily see. You know, you talk about beginning, middle, end a lot. So you might not necessarily see, oh, this is a story of a girl who went to the store and da-da-da-da. But through the process of the film, you experience some sort of story that's being told.
Yeah, no,
So
right.
it doesn't necessarily have to attach to...
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not everyone does that, and I think MDC pride themselves on
I think that's one of the things that we
on
strive
that,
to do,
yeah.
But it's interesting because, like you said, a concept video can it's still technically screen dance. It's still technically dance on film. It's just something different than maybe we connect with.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I stopped dancing for no reason a very long time ago. Saying that, I guess freestyling. I love watching.
What do you mean dancing for no reason?
Well, I love watching dancers freestyle on video. I really do love it. But after a while, I get really bored. And it's maybe because it's not going anywhere. They're not saying anything.
There's nothing for you to kind of catch
There's
on.
no narrative.
There's nothing. Again, dancing for no reason. I say like when rappers are freestyling and going off the top of their head, right?
Yeah.
They're not necessarily making sense.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go here, left and right.
Yeah.
There'll be like little bits that make sense, but they're not connected.
fair.
Exactly. So literally, they're just saying words in time with music. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the terms, and when you take it to dance, I feel that's the same thing when people are just freestyling. But what happens if you take some time to write down your words, to think about that poetry and put a narrative to it, and then look at it again and change it up? And what's a shame with dance on film is that it doesn't usually get the time that theatre works do to really develop their stories and go deeper. Because usually we have one day rehearsal, one day shoot.
Yeah,
right?
that's it. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
the industry in itself is such a great one to be a part of, but it's very quick, it's very fast, it's very it's not very time efficient. We don't really get that time.
Well, it's really funny that you bring up that the kind of essence of time and production strain, because I feel like part of the reason why Screendance has boomed recently is because it's a cheaper alternative to creating work for stage. I feel like that's part of the reason why recently it's become so saturated.
Because it's film in itself has become accessible.
Yeah, because you know, DSLR revolution and cameras are getting
in
cheaper,
the digital
and
age.
there are more people who are shooting like
Off
indie
their
production
phones.
and that sort of stuff, and it seems to have become much more accessible. And now you can, as a choreographer or as a dance producer, you can create a film potentially for a fraction of the price that you could create a stage show and do a tour. Whereas you could make a film and do a festival tour for a fraction of the price. So it's interesting that the issue still arises, even though it's loads cheaper, that we still don't have enough time. You would think, it's loads cheaper, why don't we put the same amount of money as a stage show into it? It'd be awesome. Let's put 30 grand into it.
Yeah, totally.
You know, rather than
dream,
people coming and saying, oh, you know,
I have
I'll
a
do it out of
day.
my pocket for $2,000, and then all of a sudden all those restraints are put on it again.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Even though it's a product in itself, like a stage show.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you try and strive for. You kind of show all these people all these short films that you've made for no money, and you go, look, I made these for no money.
Yeah,
I mean,
give me some
with
money.
nothing.
Imagine if you just gave me a little bit.
Yeah.
You gave me 2 weeks instead of 2 days.
Yeah.
You know.
What could we do then?
And people say, you know, the films are great, the films are amazing, but they don't actually realize
what it could
goes
be.
into it.
what
it
it could be, what's actually gone into it to make it happen in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, the work behind it.
And so, hire us, guys.
Yep.
Really
I think we should just end there.
No, yeah, exactly right. We should just finish it like that.
Done.
So I guess to end this, I want to ask the audience, what do you think screen dance is? What is dance on film for you? Whether you're coming from a dancer's perspective, a cinematographic perspective,
choreographer,
or even, makeup assistant perspective.
Yeah, anything.
What is dance on film for you? What is your story of dance on film? Because all of us have started with single stories of what dance on film is, and it's expanded into understanding so much more and changing the way that we actually see dance.
Yeah.
So I think that's another big question there, is how we see dance. A final question I want to add before we end is, who is screen dance at the moment? This is a big question that I've kind of been asking myself, because screen dance gets made quite a lot. But then as we start to see all these different types of screen dance, I've realized that majority of them are performed by white, thin, female bodies.
Performed by or
Dance, yes.
created by? Or both?
Both. A little bit of both. I mean, I guess it started...
As in the on-screen representation of dance is generally
I think when we see,
white female.
Yeah, and I wondered if you agreed with that, whether you see that in the industry or whether you feel there's a gap there.
I think to a certain extent, yes, of course. That's unfortunately the majority of what we're seeing. I don't know how much of that speaks to just the aesthetic of the film industry more than anything else, as opposed to Screendance being a white female art form. I mean, obviously, I know originally it is. There's a lot of...
It definitely comes from a big feminist standpoint and aesthetic, especially with the people who foregrounded its growth, people like Maida and Yvonne Rainer.
But what do we feel is I would counter your question with who are the people who are corely making, funding, producing, choreographing these films? Because they're ultimately people who are deciding
what's getting seen,
who they're selecting to put on screen. So is it a cultural thing of the selection process of the people creating the work more than it is who are the people on screen?
Because, well, that's the thing, because if you have a multicultural director, they might be more inclined to different representation on screen. But that doesn't necessarily mean, because like obviously we work with so many different artists from different backgrounds. We pride ourselves on diversity and trying to incorporate urban practice into dance film and what that means and how that's represented. You know, what is that? What is the, whole other discussion, but what is urban dance practice? So exploring what those possibilities are. We've seen so many incredible films in the last few years, from, Indian dance to like hip hop to salsa to, I mean, there I think it's out there. I think exposure is one part of that
But
too.
that's the thing, I think the contemporary dance world has grabbed at this form.
Big time.
And so they lead the form at the moment. And I guess that's where I saw a gap is where we needed more urban dancers on screen and urban dances and more diverse directors and other things like that. Kara Hagen speaks very, very deeply about the misrepresentation of different types of bodies on screen. And so I think it's nice that we, maybe even end this talk and say, when you watch Screendance, what do you see?
What do you see?
Who
do you see?
Yeah, and can you fill that gap? Do you take that into account? Because even when we were applying for
Do you notice
BFI, the BFI diversity guidelines were very intense, but because they know a certain thing. And one of the best things I find about Screendance is that it's grown by a feminine perspective. And that's very rare for film. Females aren't very prominent within the film industry, but they're very prominent in the Screendance industry.
Yeah, well,
so it's
they
a movement.
grabbed onto that and they were like, this is ours.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So there's a movement in a very, very right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think there's also space for growth, space for diversity, and space to try new things. And that's where we are. We out. That's been MDC Talks. Catch you next time. I'm going to think that I felt I tasted the cheese and then after this. Catch you next time.